Shit, Oogie Boogie. What was it? Okaboji?
Okaboji.
That's the
Okaboji
Patreon
cookie.
title. That's probably going to be the Patreon title. Or it's going to be the Thibaquitics or whatever. What was it?
Thibodeau.
No, the real one.
Thibodeauix.
Yes! Thibodeauix and Uchakuchi. What was it?
Okaboji.
that's close
Okaboji.
enough.
Okaboji and Thibodeauix.
Close enough.
Thibodeauix-da-boo-doo-bop. Okaboji doo-doo-bop. Damn.
Oh, that's
Damn.
the single whitest thing I've seen today.
Comes right out. Beautiful.
From fabulous Las Vegas, this is Pod Therapy. Real people, real problems, and real therapists. You can submit your questions anonymously at podtherapy.net or email us at podtherapyguys@gmail.com. The two worst teams in the Pod Therapy Fantasy Football League faced off this week. One left a loser, the other left a loser.
Less of a loser.
But slightly less of a loser, hardly noticeable.
A loser who gets free beer.
And now, broadcasting from the churn, that guy is Dr. Jim Jobin. I'm Nick Tangeman. It's time for some Pod Therapy.
Drinks are on Tangeman because the
I like that Jim keeps on saying this. I feel like this was not discussed beforehand.
Oh,
was
getting
not.
the beers? Yeah.
This is definitely something
Yeah,
that
you just
we're hearing
throw
for
those
the
in
first
there.
time.
Yeah, you
Jim
just,
has said that several times.
you just insist that there's a reward for your victory, and the other person kind of feels like, should they really dispute this? Because they did lose. So that's how that works. But yes, I am the victor. The Sin City Shrinks defeated, what's your team called?
The Milgram Shockers.
The Milgram Shockers, yeah. By a respectable gentleman's 19 points. So it was
Still
definitive.
the two worst teams in the league.
Easily. Easily. I'm pretty sure we have the worst. Yeah.
This was our Super Bowl.
Yeah, that's right. The toilet bowl. Yeah. This was, yeah. I think we actually play again later on in the season. So
Okay.
we'll get our second shot. But yeah, really good things. And it's remarkable that I beat you, considering you're an Eagle Scout. And apparently never got the fantasy football badge. So
Didn't exist.
missed on that one. If you'd like to hear more about Nick's Eagle Scout adventures and towns that we can't pronounce, patreon.com/therapy. We learned about how Nick made a friend from Iowa and got to talk for about 5-6 hours in the middle of a gym. That was nice. And we learned how to pronounce names of towns like Thibaquitics. Oh, I feel like I'm getting Chappaquiddick mixed in there, aren't I?
Yeah. A little bit.
Thipadoodle.
Jim is trying to say the town Thibodeau.
That was
Louisiana.
It. That was it. And then your place was Okaboji.
Correct.
Yeah, nailed it. Okaboji. That is going to be the Patreon
It's a
title.
fun place.
Okaboji. The way that we all wanted death by Okaboji. Oh, I'm excited for this one. It's going to be a fun episode. So come down and check out
be a nice
Patreons, patreon.com. That'd be a nice change from the boring BS that we put out. Welcome to November, everybody. Hope that is this the first episode of November? This is mid-November.
This is the second.
Welcome to
We're halfway
November's
through November
middle.
by the time this
more
airs.
of
Welcome
November.
to the navel of November. Oh, glad you're here. Enjoy November.
Hope November's treating you well.
Boy,
Yeah.
how about that first week in November, everybody?
Man, that was
That was
crazy in
crazy.
the
Something.
news. That thing happened.
That thing? Yeah.
that
Yeah.
was
People did that
super
thing.
weird. That
Yeah.
guy was scandaled and all that stuff.
Yeah.
Glad we keep this show current. All right, we got some great questions, so let's dive on in. First one, advice for a new therapist at a rehab. Oh, this is timely because we have fun conversations after the show. Hello, I am currently a graduate student getting my master's in clinical mental health counseling. I am currently interning with a highly praised addiction facility where I live. I thought I would have an incredible experience, but it's been a nightmare. I've been openly talked about. I overheard them talking shit while I was on my way to see a client. Told that I'm asking too much when I just asked for help getting my hours because no counselor would let me see their clients. And have been consistently told that I am the problem. I know I have my weaknesses as a future clinician. However, this has stunted my passion for the field and is making me doubt. Any advice or wisdom to push through? I feel as if their gatekeeping is now more clique-like than ever. You guys rock. Keep up the good work, Anonymous.
Thank you.
This is an interesting one.
Before the people who actually know about the stuff that you asked about answer this
Jake.
question,
Go for it.
I just want to throw out there, you do have to do a little bit of self-examination in this
I think so.
and see if at all, if you are at all part of the problem.
Yeah, that is.
You gotta start there. You could, because that's the easy place to start.
It is
Yourself,
the easy place
like
to start.
self-examination and dealing with yourself. That's the easy place to start. So start there.
Yeah.
if I remember,
I'm not saying that you're the problem.
But-
I don't know anything
Hey,
other
no,
than,
but
than
good
what
for
we
you
just.
for putting it
No,
out
but
there.
like you gotta at least look at it.
Yeah.
this, because I agree, and actually,
Other people are telling you that you're the problem. You have to at least explore the possibility that they might be correct.
Yeah.
One thing I learned as a graduate student, because I can relate to this, and I agree with Jacob, because
I don't know anything about this, but that's just like life experience.
well, but I mean, in that particular situation, here's the thing. When you're in graduate school, you learn a lot about the theories, you learn a lot about the book stuff,
Yeah.
you learn a lot about the research, you learn all of that.
Yeah.
And not to say that that's not valuable, but
Right.
what you learn when you get into the field is that you have to be able to put that stuff into practice.
Yeah.
And this is one of the things that I struggled with, and I think I was the problem
Yeah.
in this situation when I was a graduate student.
Yeah.
I have a theory
Because
as to whether or not you were the problem.
I have a theory as well. I think it's the same one.
I think,
Yeah.
Do you think so?
Yes is our theory.
Yeah.
Oh, you guys are on the same page
Just
on that
vocal support.
They- Yeah.
one? All right.
But continue
It's
with your
fine.
thoughts.
Anyway, I would third that. I
Yeah.
agree.
I was the problem.
Actually, I would agree with all that. But yeah, because like
It's rare that we're all three on the same page on
yeah,
something.
this is a rarity. But yeah, there's just a lot of stuff that like I knew, like, okay, best practices, this is the best thing to do, this is what all the research says. And you go in there, and sometimes, at least I can't say for you, listener, but for me, I was not very
Flexible?
political, or I don't know, like diplomatic. I was
Yeah.
not very diplomatic in my approach,
Yeah.
because I felt like, no, I have the most up-to-date research. This is how it should be.
God.
And
College Jacob agrees with you completely.
yes, College Nick and College Jacob, I think.
Yeah.
would-
You were that insufferable dude.
Yeah.
Actually, I just read a paper the other day in
No.
LexisNexis. Jesus Christ.
Yeah,
I-
so
I
that
bet
did not go over very well.
I bet Nick and
Oh.
I were very much the same in our respective paths in college. I bet Nick was not that insufferable,
Oh, I bet
but it
he
was. No, this is the right way to
bet
do
he
it. So this is how I'm
was.
going to do it.
Yeah. Yeah.
This is the way
Right.
this is the way you're supposed to do this. So that's what I'm going to be doing now.
Yeah.
And whatever you guys are doing, that's on you. But I'm going to be doing it this way.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I did learn that I was part of that problem, and but you don't really see it until you are working full time, and then the next intern comes in, or the next
Yeah.
practicum student comes in, and then you start seeing it, and you're like, oh yeah,
This
yeah,
thing.
okay,
Yeah.
yeah. And it's not to say that knowledge isn't valuable. A lot of it is
No.
how you approach it,
That's very
how
true.
you bring it in,
Yeah.
and you have to, as a student, it's a weird situation, because you have knowledge from the research, but you also have to apply that to the practical experience that you don't have. You have to continue to be a student,
Mhm.
even if you're using
Yes.
knowledge that you already have.
Well said.
No, I didn't mean to pile on to the writer here. So let's pretend like it's not the writer's problem here,
Okay.
and let's address
And
everything else now as well.
I do actually have one other thing to support what the writer is saying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because there could very easily be
Yes.
some gatekeeping happening as well
Absolutely.
as all this.
There's definitely some gatekeeping. Plus, the other thing is that the agency that you're doing this, they have an obligation, when they agreed to take on practicum students, to give them a valuable learning experience. So if you are not having access, you don't have access to the clients
right.
to actually start practicing some of this stuff, then the organization's not really doing their piece.
Okay.
What is
of
what is
that.
their responsibility?
So the organization, because I had to go through this with University of Northern Iowa when I was working at an agency, and we were taking on practicum students. Had to do the same thing with UNLV,
Okay.
where basically you have to go through kind of an orientation. And they teach you, they say like, okay, so these students are coming to you to learn the hands-on practice of what this job is. These are not
being a therapist.
yes.
Okay, great.
These are not people that you can just say, go sit in the filing room and file these papers. Go
not like-
vacuum this office.
They're not a
Go-
PA.
Exactly.
Yeah. They're not an
Exactly.
intern. They're not a PA. But they are there to be part of the process. But they're not leading the process either.
Exactly. But they still have to have access to be able to utilize these skills. So if they're learning counseling skills and techniques, but they aren't allowed access to any of the clients to actually get to work with them, then how are they supposed to practice these skills?
Yeah.
Right.
So, So you're saying if they were learning those techniques, they'd be learning those in the classroom,
Both. So they would learn a lot of it in the classroom, but they would also learn
and then
it
they would
in
work
the-
on them in real life,
Yeah.
with other patients.
So when I was supervising practicum students, they would sit in on my groups.
Okay.
And I would basically tell them, in the very beginning, you're going to be observing. As weeks go on,
Sit quietly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you're going to become you're going to take on a larger role. And you're going to start giving some feedback every once in a while. You're going to start doing some things. And by the end of the internship, then you will actually be facilitating some stuff.
Be leading the group.
Yeah, being supervised. I will always
Sure.
be there, but you will be taking on more active role.
And just so
that's-
I'm clear, it's you're the person who is ultimately responsible for everything that happens anyway.
Yeah, so I would be-
including with this practicum student.
I would be considered the field placement supervisor.
Okay.
So I'm supervising the field placement, and then they would have a university liaison person from the university that is kind of my counterpart, but for the education piece. And we would have to communicate back and forth about the practicum.
Gotcha.
student. So how they're learning.
So if they're
their
selling drugs at a drug rehab,
skill. Right.
that's on you.
That's a problem.
Yeah.
Frowned
Yeah.
upon.
And so but if I had this practicum student and I said, no, you can't talk to any of the clients.
Mhm.
No, you can't come to group. No, you can't do all this
Type
stuff.
up this report for me.
Yeah, then they're not getting the experience they're supposed to be getting.
Yeah. All right. So I'm going to take an interesting perspective on this one. I
I
want to try
doubt it,
to.
but go on.
Well, okay. I'm reading this letter carefully. So, writer, here's where I want you to hear us. So, think of us not as people that have any influence on your career, unlike all these other folks that you're interacting with. We're not your professors at your school. We're not other therapists at your facility. We have no ability to hurt you or harm you.
One of us doesn't know anything about it.
One of us is a life coach. So you really can let your guard down and hear my words, okay? Think of me as just a slightly older buddy who is doing this and probably has some life lessons because I've worked in this exact environment. The first thing I'm going to offer you, friend, okay? Please drop your shields. Let me speak to you here. First thing I'm going to offer you is possible explanations for why you're not the problem, but why you're off to a tough start, okay? I'm going to offer you that feedback. Then I'm going to build you up at the end and answer your question where you said, hey, but honestly, advice for making this better.
So first we're going to tear you down.
No,
Then
that's
we're
not
gonna
where I'm
build
going.
you up.
Not hot
Then we're going to tear you down. And if we have time,
Put some
We'll
mulch
build
on
you
you
back
silently while I watch suicidal squirrels dive from their cult trees in silence.
patreon.com/therapy.
Check it out. So, all right, writer, a couple of things. First, you're a graduate student. You're studying clinical mental health counseling. You're in a highly praised addictions facility. Let me kind of add some context to that. First, of all the places that you could find yourself as a practicum student in general mental health therapy, an addictions facility may be the most difficult of all of them, next to maybe an inpatient psych hospital.
That's exactly what I was going to say.
Seems like it'd be really tough.
Pretty hard. The word facility implies to Jim, we're not talking about an outpatient clinic. Also, there's not a lot of outpatient addictions counseling. So we're probably talking about an acute or subacute detox facility with a residential component. So already,
Is this going to have patients that are there
Rehab.
that are like being ordered
They
to be
stay
there legally and all that?
they
all that kind of-
might,
like
but it's a rehab.
Most likely.
And rehabs are already really, really hard to work in.
Yeah.
Because these folks are going through a lot. They usually have mental health components. They have an addictions component. They don't want to be there. They're very fussy. They're very irritable, very difficult to manage. That's the first piece, is that this particular scenario that you appear to be describing is already very high bar for a master's student. The second thing is, when you say the phrase highly praised addictions facility, that to my ears sounds like luxury, outpatient, cash pay, PPO, higher end facility, which is an honor to be there. But I'll tell you that when Nick and I ran similar programs, I did have student interns that I brought in, and I let them know, you're here to learn, and there may be days that I give you a task, like to run a group. You won't be doing a lot of this hands-on stuff that you're hoping to do here, right? And I would tell them that during the interview process. Why? Every one of these patients is very valuable to my industry, and every one of my staff is highly trained. And all the staff who F up and are not valuable to me, I have fired. And I'm not more interested in your education than I am my program. But if you would like a seat at this table, if you want to learn here for whatever your reason is, come on in. but you play by my rules. And so this is where I slightly disagree with Nick. Like, I will, as a non-professor on your academy, I have no obligation to you, kid. I don't owe you jack shit. If I can be honest with you, friend, for just a second, I don't owe you shit. I'm running a program. No, for real. Follow me on this. Yes, there's the gatekeeper thing, but hear me in love, friend. Really, hear my voice here. I don't owe you anything. And that's not because I don't like you. It's because I have a job to do. It's a very high-pressure job. Addictions facilities are already very hard. Residential programs are very hard. Luxury programs are the hardest of the hard, with the highest levels of professionalism, the hardest to staff. You got to be damn good. And honestly, as a graduate student, my first-day technician probably knows more than you. If I have a technician working the graveyard shift who has 3 years sobriety, he's probably more useful than you are. Now, that's not to say you're bad at this or you don't matter. It's to say your graduate program probably couldn't have possibly prepared you for this particular milieu. It is a very unique milieu. Very unique. It is something people get good at from experience alone. Clinical training helps. It is the background, but I will take it. To me, addictions treatment, this is like you got a West Point officer walking in with a bunch of seasoned, grizzled sergeants. And the West Point officer's kind of upset that, like, you're reaching for your sergeants and not them. They're like, hey, man, I'm qualified. And you're like, you're not. Because we're in a theater of war. These guys have been shot at and you haven't. So the first thing I would offer you, friend, is that even from what you're describing, coming from a clinical mental health counseling background, you're not going to have a lot of training in addiction stuff. Even if you have book work, it's not the same. It is the addictions background is something you learn only by experience and mentorship. In the state of Nevada, our clinicians who go into marriage and family therapy, clinical professional counseling, and other disciplines, we have a separate license just for addictions in our state because we see it as its unique standalone discipline. It has a special set of skills. So first point is that you might just be the odd person out, not because you're bad at this and not because they hate you, but because you're not in the club. And unlike mental health clinics that are just outpatient clinics or student clinics or whatever else other platforms your friends might be interning in, this is a badass situation that honestly, it is a little bit more grizzled. It is a higher bar to be ready for it. The hiring process is much higher. That may be a part of this.
But I think part of that, though, I think the way that you're explaining this, though, you're kind of looking at it from the perspective of the place that we most recently worked together.
Which I'm drawing clues from the letter to do that.
But
highly appraised addictions facility
but that
could be luxury inpatient.
It could be. It could also not be.
Maybe
because,
not. Then take Nick's advice. But mine is specifically focused
let
on
me
what
finish
if
my
this.
thought.
Go on.
If you are in that position where we were in, that was a luxury. It was catered towards people with money that were supposed to be
not just money. It's really good insurance, but the model doesn't work on bulk. I can't lose a patient.
Yeah, fine.
Okay.
Just calm down.
Well, they don't know this.
Calm.
I'm going to finish my point because you two discussed it for 10 minutes and I sat silently and waited to give my points.
My point is that you shouldn't take interns.
That's all the time we have this week.
Yeah. Have a great week. All right. So
you shouldn't take practicum students if that's the case.
Yeah. Okay. I know, and I agree with that logic. I do agree. The program needs to ask themselves if it really is a good idea. For us, when we did this, I would take one student. I vetted that very confidently. I was very careful, and I explained to them my terms at the very beginning. I said, your friends, your colleagues are going to get more hands-on experience than you will with me because your friends, they're interning at Medicaid clinics, and they have absolutely hundreds of people coming through the doors every day. You could screw up with them, and the facility will be fine.
Which honestly would probably be better.
It might be
practicum experience.
That's why I'm telling the writer. It might not be you. It might be the context that you found yourself in is a very demanding environment. It is a high bar, a high curve of learning. It is a high bar of professionalism. You usually have to be really good or really experienced to do it. The other point that I wanted to make
does this person have a boss? Is there like a single person that is this person's boss?
There will, but everybody's kind of your boss when you're a student.
No, but of course, but there's like a main person that is responsible.
Somebody. No, I'm talking like a field placement supervisor. There's somebody that signs the paperwork.
Yeah, that works for the company?
Yes.
And they're on site there.
Yes. So
Is
there's
this,
usually one person responsible for doing
Is this a case that the writer could go to the person and just say like, hey, if we could, please let's schedule 15 minutes of time for you and I to sit down, because I think that I'm not clear on what my responsibilities here are, and what it is that I'm supposed to be doing here, and what it is that you guys are supposed to be doing for me, because there is a responsibility both directions here. Am I right?
Yes, there is. And that to table of contents where my answers were going. I said I'm going to start with telling you why you might be the problem.
Yep.
And then I'm going to give you an offer of solution, which is that's the direction I'm going to go.
Okay, great.
Practical advice of how to solve your problem. So the second thing I want to talk about for how you're not the problem, but how you could be facing the problem. The other thing about the addictions industry that is very different than other forms of mental health care, the addictions industry does have a chip on its shoulder. It is gritty, it is salty, it is blue. A lot of the people in your program, the professionals that you're working side by side with, were once using dope or went to rehabs themselves. Okay, so they may be polished and educated now, and they have their licenses and stuff, and they may have been in prison at some point. It can be a very different dynamic. It tends to be much more salt of the earth, even at the luxury level where they're trying to be fancy-pantsy. They tend to be much more raw and real. And I do think that clicky things form, and Nick and I have talked about that in past episodes of the show, because neither Nick or myself is in recovery for addiction. And the industry that we've worked in, sometimes we were excluded because we were the normies, we were the square bears, we're the guys that showed up here, came through the academy, and the rest of them came up from the street, from the school of hard knocks. And there's a debate about that. Like, we sometimes have to have a debate about method, and it turns into these camps. Like, there's the guys that know better, that did it in the rooms, and then there's the squares like us that did it in school. And so it's already a very binary system that you're in, and you might be seen as team academic in an environment that maybe favors more team recovery rooms. Okay. And by the way, those are stupid delineations. Like, we agree that both sides are really helpful. But I'm just telling you, as a newbie to the field, this is part of the invisible culture that may be permeating the addictions industry that you're walking into. And you might be perceived, like when you say, man, they're talking shit about me, that is really unprofessional. I can't see that happening anywhere but the addictions industry. Like, I could not see that happening at a mental health clinic. I couldn't see that happening at a Medicaid clinic. I couldn't see that happening anywhere. I couldn't see that happening at a psych hospital. I could see that absolutely happening at every rehab in America. Because everyone I've ever worked at, it's gritty, it's blue, I don't care about your feelings. Like, there's people like that on staff. So I could see that happening. Those are my examples of how this could be not your fault, but how this context is happening. Mm-hmm. Now, advice for how to make this stop. Jacob got to it before I did. So you have a clinical director, you have somebody that is in charge, going to them and saying, pulling out the piece of paper that says, this is what I need to do in order to complete my work here. In order to complete my student internship, I need to do these things. Do you feel that I'm going to be able to get these done? Or do you think I need to change sites? If they are going out, now this is where I circle back to when I said, I don't owe you anything. These are my patients. I'm responsible to them. I'm responsible to federal law. I am responsible to state law. I am responsible to the insurer. I have taken you on as a favor to my discipline, and maybe I like your professor. If I have any lack of confidence in your skills at all, that doesn't mean I don't like you. It doesn't mean I don't think you're going to be a good professional. It means I'm not going to put you in before you're ready. Why? Because this guy might relapse and die tonight, and I'm not doing that for your education. If I was your professor, maybe I'd care that much. I'm not. I don't care that much. Our paths are not intertwined. You are a visitor in my universe. I live here. So at the end of the day, I will make executive decisions. And if I don't think you're ready, I don't owe it to you to give you a chance. Now, you may come to me and say, hey, man, you haven't put me in the game. The requirements for my university are that I get this many hours of one-on-one time or do groups. Do you think that that's not going to be a possibility? You don't have to ask why. You just have to say, you could say, is there something you need me to do, to train in, to get better at? And if I say, no, I just don't think I'm going to make it happen. I don't think it's going to be a possibility, Bob. And you know what? Then you say, okay, do you think I should put in for a change of venue? And, give me the option to be like, yeah, maybe you should. And that might be, but at the end of the day, Ryder, I'm trying to tell you how to solve the problem. Because and I'm also, I hope you heard my voice and my heart caring for you here as a future professional. I'm rooting for you, buddy, because I'm not running that rehab. But if you sat with me and asked me, hey, man, you owe this to me, like I'm a student and you said yes to this and you have obligations, I would pull out your contract and rip it in half.
Oh,
and be like, I don't know you jack shit.
Yeah, I think we agree that nobody owes anybody
I don't know you
here.
nothing.
Well, but here's the thing, though. I do think, though, that the experience that it's been my experience in Nevada that the schools don't do a very good job of setting this thing up.
But that's the problem. If the schools don't prepare it well, and they just send the intern to me and go, Jim will learn you straight. I like teaching, and so I'll talk to you one-on-one, and I'll let you observe my groups, and I'll put you in scenarios.
But your job there every day is not to
teach. I
teach.
have a lot to do. Yeah, and you're here to be a fly on the wall as far as I'm concerned. And addictions inpatient is a high level of care. That is a high level of care. I wouldn't hire techs that didn't know what they were doing. So it's just not the level of care that I'm going to throw you in and be like, so at my luxury inpatient where we really have to be the best at our trade to do this, I'm going to let you be one-on-one with clients. I'm not. You don't know enough. And this particular demographic is very difficult to work with. They can be manipulative. They can be staff splitting. There can be a lot of components to this. You might say the wrong thing and trigger them, and that could be a problem. Yeah, I'm very protective of my clients.
I know, but I do think, though,
I'm very protective.
But if you're there as a practicum student, you have to be there as a practicum student, and the place that you're at, they have accepted a student, and so they.
But Nick's right. I shouldn't.
There is part of the job there.
I shouldn't take them if I don't trust them to do it, and I'm not going to take the risk of letting them do what I've signed up to let them do. Then you're right, Nick. I shouldn't take.
Oh no! After this conversation, I don't think Jim's rehab clinic should take a practicum student.
I shouldn't. Which is why my advice is go to the director and say, "Hey, it looks like we're out of alignment. I don't know if I've lost your confidence, or I don't know if maybe this isn't going to be possible this semester. That happens. Mm-hmm. Maybe the census isn't really there for me this year. Do you think I should switch to another place and get my hours?"
So here's how this was set up when I was in school. Is we had one class that was our practicum class.
Yeah.
We had that class once a week for an hour where we would discuss basically what's going on in our practicum setting.
Yeah.
And we had a professor for that class.
Right.
That professor arranged, with our permission and with all the organizations in the area, these internships. Okay,
we had to go get our own.
No, we did too.
Okay,
but they were already established with these.
Yeah,
we had the university had relationships with all of these organizations.
Oh wow!
So they were getting interns every semester.
They were used to it.
Yeah, they were used to it. Plus, there was always somebody who was identified as the field placement supervisor who was responsible for the intern. There was a learning agreement, just the same as what we have for board interns. Sure. We're going to do these things. Everybody was on board. There was constant communication between the university and the field placement supervisor.
It sounds like there's an established path for the student.
Exactly.
There.
So it's like it was well established what was going to be happening.
This doesn't sound well established.
No, it doesn't.
That's why I would probably say, and look, Ryder, I'm trying to be on your side here, but I'm also trying to give you veteran perspective because, you're describing a very unique Milu. If you were talking about it's an outpatient on-campus free clinic, or it's an outpatient Medicaid clinic or whatever, then I would say, okay, they are probably surviving on your labor, first off. That's probably part of their business model is student interns being part of their staff, and that's how they're doing it. At this level, a luxury inpatient addictions program does not need you. You are a liability. More than you are an asset, you're a liability. And if I've been in that situation, I chose only to take one intern, and I explained the deal, and I warned them, you may not get your hours. I'm going to try, but if I'm forced to pick between a bad day and, fulfilling your hours, I'm picking having a better day.
I am going to push back on two things you said, though, real quick, and then I'm done. Okay. Because I don't want this to go too far in which you're implying that Medicaid-funded organizations don't care about their clients.
Let me correct it then. If that's the intonation, then I will correct. And thank you for teaching or saying, hey, Jim, be careful. You may have sounded like that. What I mean by that is the more expensive a program, the less populated it will be. And therefore, the survivability of that institution depends more and more on those patients. If you have an entire company where they have 100 patients a year,
you mean the financial survivability of the company at all?
Every one of those patients represents 1/100th of the annual budget of that program, right? So Medicaid is a public government-funded insurance. It is the largest insurer in the nation, in every single state, next to Medicare and Medicaid. They both do that together. And so the vast majority of the public has that, and that means that almost any healthcare provider that takes that is booked out. And that's usually one of the frustrating things about living with Medicaid is like, oh man, it's really hard to get on the list and stuff like that. Whereas if you have a PPO insurance, you skip the line, or if you're paying cash, you can come in today, right? And so it just goes down to volume. If you have high volume, low net worth of a per insured patient that you're treating, my point is the company can afford to fail and the boss ain't going to get fired. If you have a student intern who's doing it for free or something like that at a clinic or doing Medicaid work, the volume is so high, it's lower stakes. When you have a 10-bed inpatient, luxury inpatient, the stakes are very high. If you lose one member of that, of the clientele, you lost 10% of the census.
So if
that's a lot of pressure.
So if the Medicaid facility, so let me just figure this out into common language here.
Okay.
At the Medicaid facility, what you're saying is if a patient basically does not like the care that they are receiving and decides to leave.
Yeah.
Or I guess in worst case scenario, like you said earlier, they have a relapse and they die.
Well, and I wasn't comparing addiction.
And I don't mean to sound crass or not.
Yeah,
I don't mean to sound harsh when I say that, but I'm just looking at like kind of the two ends of that spectrum, how you might not have a patient anymore.
Right.
There is another person, and this is. I'm trying really hard not to sound callous.
Let me rescue it. Let me rescue it because we're already off.
But you're gonna get another patient coming in,
Yeah.
and so your financial bottom line is going to survive.
Low stakes.
And also in that Medicaid facility,
Right.
because you have people there that are absolutely doing the fucking Lord's work.
Right.
They are there working
and
with
we've
people
done that, by the way, in
who
our
do not
careers.
have, they can't afford private insurance. They can't afford to go to a fancy facility or whatever.
Right.
And so they are going to the place. They may be court ordered to go there, or what have you.
Right.
But the people who are working there are doing the fucking Lord's work.
Yeah.
And so if you have a severe case, you're not going to have a practicum student heading up that severe case anyway.
Same scenario. Student teacher getting their student hours at overcrowded public school.
Mm-hmm.
Colleague of student teacher, another student, going to hyper elite private school.
Yes.
There are 10 kids in a room at the hyper elite private school. The teacher is one of the best in the nation, and the expectations are extremely high. They had to advertise very hard to get this done, and it matters a lot how that student teacher performs in that environment. Student teacher in the public school has more room to fail. The class is overcrowded. We're happy you're here. We desperately need you. We're not even going to criticize you very much. Thank you for being here because there's 50 kids in a room, and my hands were full anyway.
Right. And I guess the other part, too, is I don't want to send the message that you're not going to get a good experience as a practicum student in a Medicaid facility.
No, that's where you should get your experience, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, I was a supervisor of one of those facilities as far as when students came in. That's where I did my practicum
Well, look
hours.
at right here. The writer's not getting a good experience.
No, I know.
Oh, okay.
So take what we're saying about the practical or about the Medicaid
go
places.
to the Medicaid place.
Take what we're saying about that
Right.
with our intent here.
Yeah, because I think you can get a great experience. It has nothing to do, in my opinion, with whether it's Medicaid or whether it's private funded or luxury or not. What it has to do with is how the organization, how they value practicum students.
Yes.
And you can get a great experience at either location.
Right.
But it all has to do with how well organized it is.
Yes. And that's why, as a student, I would want him going toward like the public school in this case, because you will be put hands-on and you'll have to use your skills and you'll get good at this. You'll get more contact hours in that environment than you will at the elitist school because they're like, don't touch anything. You'll make it dirty. Like, just sit here and watch us teach.
Right.
Do you want me to tutor the kids? No, I don't want you to. I've got this. And like, yeah, it's a different environment. It's a different culture. You're going to learn less in that environment.
So bottom line, kind of condensing the advice here is go to your boss. And I would say set an appointment.
Yeah, of course.
15, 20, 30 minutes, however long you think you'll need. Actually, no. 15, 20, 30 minutes.
Yeah.
Don't go however long you think you need. If you think you need 3 hours, you don't need 3 hours.
Yeah.
But I would say like a quick and I would suggest offering to do it on your own time outside of whatever the normal working hours are.
Yeah.
I think that would be a nice step and a show of politeness. Yeah, and a show of respect for your person's time there. And go to them kind of hat in hand is what I'm advocating for here. And really is just kind of like, I think that I have screwed up here. I'm not sure how I've screwed up here. I'd love to know. I'd love for you to explain that to me. and I'd love for you to explain to me what I need to do to continue here going forward,
Right.
or if you think that I should continue here at all.
Yeah.
And
Or if
I
you
just
think
want
I'm
to
gonna
know
not get the hours.
what you think that your responsibility to me is, and what is my responsibility to you.
Yeah.
I think what
Help me spell this out.
Yeah.
regardless of what you do to solve this problem, the only way you're going to reach a resolution is through humility.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Whether
So-
you're right or not,
Exactly.
they are the gatekeepers.
Yep.
Oh,
And-
this is a fine case. We have talked about it in
Yeah.
other scenarios before. This is a fine case of, do you want to be right or do you want to be happy?
yeah.
Correct.
Yes.
Because
Right.
even if you're 100% right and they're just being assholes
It
and
will not work out
gatekeeping
for
and
you.
all of that,
Yeah.
they're still the gatekeepers.
Yes. Yeah. And also, every bit of help that I've offered you today, I hope you hear it in a spirit of love, because I'm trying to be like that harsh voice, but that is your friend. I think that that's where I'm at. But also, I made all these mistakes, when I was in your shoes, and I had to take my lumps of humility too. I didn't tell my coming up stories like Nick did, but yeah. I remember when I lectured the clinical director about how he may be violating HIPAA because the client's names are on the census.
Oh, I can't imagine Jim doing that.
I did that to Dr. Pohl.
Wait, Jim Jobin?
Yeah, Dr. Pohl,
Little
the
Jimmy
best
Jobin did
doctor
that?
in the state. And I was like, "Do you think that maybe we're violating HIPAA?" And he just stared at me silently. I was like, "Get out! Like maybe
Back
you
of the
should just
hand.
leave now."
Yeah.
That was not a good day. All right, we're gonna take. We just gave you half the show, Ryder. So I hope that you feel honored. Very rarely does that happen.
Yeah.
But that's how intriguing
And
your
also,
topic was.
good job on this.
Yeah.
because people need what you're trying to provide.
Yeah,
Yep.
and I love that our show is actually listened to by a bunch of students, interns, perspectives. So it's always cool to get to talk to colleagues. We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we are talking about how to get a friend into therapy. You're listening to Pod Therapy.
Today's episode is brought to you by Judy Schneider, Mason Miller, Leon Kassab, and Newstick.
Love them.
Today's episode, the theme is national parks.
Oh, I have a shot.
I doubt
Wait,
it.
unless it's where they're at.
Located in the mountain range Tularosa Basin, this park, containing sand dunes composed of gypsum crystals, is located within a missile range and is subject to closure when tests are conducted.
What?
Is it A, the Indiana Dunes, B, White Sands, C, Great Sand Dunes, or D, Death Valley? If you'd like to hear this episode, if you'd like to join the Theraproducers, make the show possible, go to patreon.com/therapy and sign up.
Could it be Death Valley?
I have heard of this before.
I mean,
I can't pull it out. I can't pull the name out of my head.
bombs blow up in that direction. That feels right.
Okay.
But I mean, at Basin? Is it a basin?
I'm gonna go B. I'm gonna go light sands.
White Sands?
Oh, white sands or light sands?
White.
Does that change it?
Indiana Dunes,
Light sands for some reason rung
Great
a bell
Basin.
in me.
Great Sand
but now that I
Dunes.
know that it's not that.
and Death Valley.
I mean, Death Valley feels like a decoy, doesn't it? But it also feels right. Also, quick,
I mean, it's definitely within missile range of several things.
I think it is.
I mean, it definitely is.
but it feels too big to shut down because of missile tests. It feels like that'd be really but then it's got to be.
I'm staying with B. I'm staying with white sands.
I'll go Death Valley.
It is White Sands.
All right.
Wow, where is that?
New Mexico.
Oh, yeah, Death Valley.
That's if you had said white sands, New Mexico, I would have known that was it.
That would have been the right thing. Yeah, I like it.
That definitely rings the bell.
Speaking of our advertisement for patreon.com/therapy and joining Theraproducers, I think people have written in before, so from time to time I like to clarify this. Anybody can be a Theraproducer. There is not a finite amount. There were in the very beginning of the show, and then eventually we decided to expand with the original 8's permission. And so anybody can just become a Theraproducer, and we will read your name during the commercial breaks. We call it the Saccharin 16. That was a joke that was made 2 years ago during March Madness and may have deceived a lot of people.
We're sticking with it.
A lot of people are like, I'd like
I
to be a
believe I've said
Theraproducer.
over and over again, it's dumb to put a number on that.
Yeah, it is. And so, whatever. How to get my friend into therapy. Hi, I have a friend who has expressed to me several times how much they think they need mental health help. He struggles with suicidal and violent thoughts. He's had an insanely traumatizing childhood that haunts him all the time. I always give him the time of day if he needs someone to turn to, but I can only do so much. I'm not a mental health professional, and I'm not trying to act like one. I just want to be there if he needs to vent. I'm currently in therapy and I've shared how much it's helped me. I haven't been pushy about it, but I've suggested to him that he should go try it out. He agrees that he needs some kind of help, but he's scared. He doesn't want to go to a doctor and be medicated, which is completely understandable. But he is also scared to talk to a therapist. He's genuinely convinced that any therapist would just automatically commit him to a mental institution because of the thoughts that he has. Do you guys have any advice I can say to him to explain that that's not usually what happens? Is there anything I can suggest to him besides therapy, or should I just leave it alone? P.S. I love your podcast. It always helps me get through the day when I'm at my super boring job. Anonymous.
Thanks,
Okay.
Anonymous.
Anonymous.
So, as far we talked about this before, but I guess this would be a good thing to kind of reiterate. A therapist cannot just put somebody away against their will.
Nope.
There has to. The only case that they could do that is if there is a clear threat of imminent danger that they're going to harm themselves or someone else.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
There's nothing else. I mean, even if the person is admitting to a crime that they've already committed, they can't do anything.
Yeah.
The therapist can't do anything.
Yeah.
It's literally just imminent danger to themselves or someone else, and that's it.
Yeah.
So you can explain that. I don't know, maybe if you want to share this episode with them, and if it's coming from us, maybe they'll be more apt to hear that.
Hey, there you go. So bring this part to your friend, and we're going to speak to them directly. Hi, friend of Anonymous. Your buddy cares about you enough and likes therapy for themselves and our show to write in and ask for advice. And so I want to give you some straight advice. So, hi, I'm Dr. Jim. I'm a therapist, and I've worked with people just like you. You're not weird. You're not strange. You're not broken. And what you're going through is very common. Your friend wrote us that maybe you've been through a lot in your childhood and that you're having some scary thoughts about hurting yourself, thoughts about hurting other people. And let me tell you something, again, as a therapist, none of that freaks me out. It happens all the time. Therapy is the safe place to talk about that stuff with somebody that knows how to be helpful with it. And you know what? You might think you know what we're going to do as a therapist. You might think that you know what we're going to do ahead of time, and so why even go? But I promise you that you don't, because every therapist is different. And our approach starts with getting to know you, to find out your story, find out what kinds of thoughts you're having. But I'll tell you, those thoughts aren't even the most interesting thing. We're interested in getting to know you as a human and then creating a safe place to talk about those thoughts when you have them. We also want to know about your history, want to know about your day, want to know about your lunch, want to know about your friends, want to know about what's going on, what's in your future. And yeah, along the way, we're going to give you some coaching and give you some ideas about how to feel better about some things. And yeah, your therapist might even say, hey, some of this sounds like you might be going through some real depression. You might be struggling about some things. They might teach you about medicine options just so you can learn more. Your friend mentioned that you're not interested in that because you don't just want to be medicated. And hey, I get that idea. A lot of people are afraid that if they tell people that they're struggling and they're hurting, that we're just going to throw pills at them, and that feels very dismissive.
And you're going to tell your therapist that.
That's right. You're going to tell your therapist, I'm afraid that that's going to happen. And your therapist is going to tell you what I'm telling you right now. Medicine is a tool. It's just one of the tools. There's lots of tools on the table, and we might encourage you to consider that. But if we do, it's not because we want to make those thoughts go away in the blink of an eye, and we're not going to change who you are. It's because it sounds like you might be very sad, and maybe there's some medicines that help balance that out. Or you might be very fearful, and there's some medicines that might balance that out. Or you might be having nightmares or trouble sleeping, and there's some medicines that balance that out. None of them is a one-size-fits-all solution. They're just tools that go along with this entire thing that we call mental health care. And guess what? You're not the only one using it. Mental health care is a big part of the healthcare system. It's designed to help people because, hey, we all start hurting at some point. We all start going through stuff, and we want to make that better. That's the whole idea, friend. And so I hope that you'll consider it. I don't think you need to be afraid of this stuff. And listen, if you're really worried, like, oh, this guy's just setting me up, I'm going to go walk into a therapist's office, they're going to throw a bag around my head and take me away. Hey, I'll give away the game. You want to know when we will take you into custody? You want to know when you're going to a hospital? Think of a baseball diamond, okay? First base, second base, third base. For a person that's suicidal or homicidal, here's what first base looks like. First base, the person's just thinking thoughts. They say, you know what, Jim? Sometimes I think about giving up. Sometimes I think I don't want to be here. I don't want to be alive anymore. I feel hopeless. I feel worthless. Or they say, you know what, Jim? Sometimes I get so angry inside. I see these other people. I just think I don't want to be around anybody. I wish these people were dead. I wish they'd all go away. And yeah, sometimes I think about crazy things like just killing people. That's first base, okay? Second base is whenever a person starts telling us they have a plan. They say, Jim, not only do I feel this way about getting rid of my life and ending things, I feel so hopeless. Here's how I think I would do it. You know, I've been sitting down, I've been really putting pen to paper. Here's how I would practically do that. See, here's what I have access to. Here's how this would reasonably get done. Or, same thing with homicide. Here's how this would reasonably get done. Here's my plan. It's getting practical. It's getting serious. That's second base. Third base is not only do I have a plan, not only do I have these thoughts, now I have intentions. Now I'm laying it down. Okay, not just thinking of how I would do it. Well, second base is the how. Third base is the plan. So to correct myself, second base is here's how I would do it. Third base is I'm planning on doing it. This is when I would do it. This is the conditions that I would do it.
This
is where I would do it. Now we're getting to intention. Right around that, friend, is when the therapist is going to say, hey, I'm here as your helper, and I think that now we need to make a safety plan. Now we need to make a safety plan. They probably still won't take you, like say, hey, we need to get you into a hospital or something like that. And look at how severe that is, buddy, like, or ma'am, like whenever you get that far down the road here that you're like, yeah, I want to do this. I know how I would do this. I have very practical means to doing this. And now I'm struggling with really making a plan. And like, I find myself feeling like I might actually do this. At that point, you're going to be so afraid of your own actions that you're going to want help. And that's what the therapist is there to do, is to say, do you want me to help you stop this from happening? And yeah, you probably will be like, please stop this from happening. I'm not well. That's third base. And it's when people are crossing third base and starting to head home, that's whenever we might say, hey, listen, let's get you somewhere safe. Let's cool these thoughts off. Let's make sure nothing bad happens that's going to be regrettable. Friend, you're probably where most humans are. A lot of humans have gotten to first place. A lot of humans have gotten to second place. Therapists are trained to deal with that. So you don't have to be afraid. I gave away the game. There you go. We are legally not empowered to just rip away your rights and throw you around into hospitals. We don't do that for a living. We don't have that authority. We can only do that if people are crossing third base. That's when we have to intervene. And we still do it with you. We sit you down. We say, hey, I'm worried about you. Obviously, you're worried about this too. That's why we're talking. And your therapist by then has earned your trust. And your therapist doesn't just abandon you. They say, let's make a plan for your safety. And that could include help. But that is the last thing you have to be concerned about.
Frankly, if therapy worked that way, it wouldn't be viable as a profession.
It just wouldn't work. Yeah, we couldn't make the system work.
Let me tell you something, and this is also to the friend of the friend of Anonymous. I am an audio guy. We laugh and we call me a life coach. I'm a sound guy and I'm a comedian. That's all I am. That is the end of my experience with any of this stuff. I have a lot of friends that have gone through a lot of things. I've gone through things. We've all gone through things. You're going through things now. The really neat thing about a therapist, right now you have a really good friend, and your friend wrote into us to get some advice and some tips. There are times when you go and talk to that friend and you unload a little bit with that friend. And I bet that's nice, and I bet your friend loves being able to do that with you. The neat thing about a therapist is those times when you feel like I would love to talk to somebody about this, and I don't want to burden my friend with this. Mm-hmm. The neat thing about a therapist is you're paying them.
Right.
They're working for you.
Right.
You get to go to them and say, hey, here's the stuff that I don't want to unload on my friend because I don't want to burden my friend with this. Yeah. I don't want to have to take this to my friend, so I'm bringing it to you. I'm paying my insurance. I'm paying my copay. You're getting paid. What do we need to talk about?
Right.
Let's talk through this. And it sounds like such a small thing. That's everything.
Yeah,
Very
it's huge.
free.
That is huge.
Yeah.
That's somebody like your doctor.
Right.
You'd go to the doctor, you'd go to the ER if you break your leg, and they're getting paid. They're getting paid to help you.
Right.
That's the same thing with your therapist.
That's their job.
Your therapist is getting paid to help you out, and in many cases, that just means that they're getting paid to sit there and listen to you unload.
That might be a big part of it. And
yeah.
That's entirely fine. And you're right.
And it's great.
It feels good to talk about things. You don't have to expect that we're going to throw something at you like pills or put you in a facility. I know that stuff scares people. Honestly, it's not what we do.
I think a lot of people are afraid of therapy because they look at it kind of like if you were driving a car, they look at at the therapist as being somebody who's going to come in and take the wheel.
Right.
And that's not what therapy does.
No.
Actually, a therapist is somebody who sits in the passenger seat and gets out the map.
Yes.
You are always going to be in the driver's seat of the car.
You don't want to drive.
Yeah, the only situation in which that wouldn't happen is like what Jim said, if there's imminent danger. But
even
that's
then,
even a really
all we're doing is saying,
small
"Hey,
piece.
let's pull over."
I think
Let's pull over.
Yeah, I think for
let
the
it
most
rain
part,
pass, and we'll
it's
get back on the road.
the passenger is the therapist is going to be navigating, and they're going to go where you want to go. They're not going to force you to turn a direction that you don't want to turn.
Right.
They're there for support, guidance. They're your little your mental health Sherpa.
Yeah, and listen, it's not like the therapist community is a bunch of messiahs that can do no wrong. Hey, listen, we're humans, we're dumb, we make mistakes, we tell inappropriate jokes at the wrong times, we start podcasts that are probably going to one day end in our license disbarment. We make all sorts of errors. Yeah, the life coach guy's fine. But listen, at the end of the day, you have one responsibility. Do the next right thing. That's all I ask of you, Anonymous's friend. I want you to do the next right thing. If you're noticing, man, I'm having terrible thoughts, I am unhappy, I am suffering, I'm telling my friends about this, I'm grateful that they're in my life, they don't know what to do, they love me, they're worried for me, then your responsibility to them and to yourself, do the next right thing. That might be going to a support group. That might be calling the suicide hotline and just starting a conversation. They're not tracking you. They're not going to come to your house. You can just text them. That would be fine. You can call NAMI, the National Alliance on Mental Illness. Go to NAMI.org. You can find support groups in your area. You can show up to real buildings with real humans. You can give them a fake name. You can just say, hey, I heard on a podcast about you guys. I'm here just to kind of sit down and talk it out. Those are other people. They're peer-led. Therapists aren't allowed in the building. They're completely led by other people living through mental health crises and getting support. Call your local hospitals and ask if they have a support group that's completely peer-led. They absolutely will. If you need to talk to a therapist and you just want to, the finances is a problem, go to your local college or university. Ask them if they have a student counseling program or counseling programs in general that are led by students. They will. They'll offer free or low-cost therapy. There's always an option. If you're in the United States, you can dial 211 anywhere that you live, and that's like a mental health crisis line, and they will direct you toward resources. Your responsibility is to do the next right thing. That's it. You show up, put yourself where you need to be, talking to the people that you need to talk to, and then just do the next right thing every day. Let that therapist or let that support group or let that anonymous tip line support you. That's what you're supposed to do.
To the writer, just keep being a cheerleader.
That's it.
Yeah, take care.
Tell your truth, tell your story. We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we're closing out the show and thanking the patrons. You're listening to, what is our show called? Pod Therapy.
Today's episode is brought to you by Judy Schneider, Mason Miller, Leon Kasab, and Newstick. If you'd like to sponsor a show, become a therapy producer at patreon.com/therapy.
There you go.
National
You guys are
parks.
on it tonight.
We remember our show names.
I'm doing like 3 different things at the same time. All right, National Park. Last question.
Got it.
Located at the westmost end of the Florida Keys.
Oh, no.
And only accessible by boat and plane, this park is home to an undisturbed coral reef, shipwrecks, and the site of Fort Jefferson, a Civil War era fort that has the largest masonry structure in the Western Hemisphere.
Wow.
Is it A, Dry Tortugas,
Oh, that's
B, Channel Islands, C, Isle Royale,
Ooh, that's
D,
good.
Biscayne, or E, Jellystone? And if you'd like to join the Therapy Producers, make the show possible, go to patreon.com/therapy and sign up. Again, that's patreon.com/.
That's the nice picnic basket.
I think Channel Islands.
Okay.
I'm going with that Tortuga one. That sounds awesome.
Dry
Tortuga.
Tortugas.
Hell yeah. That sounds like a great name
Do you
for
know
a
what that
park.
is?
Dry turtles.
Yeah.
Yeah, I speak a little
You are
Espanol.
correct.
Hell yeah.
Dry Tortugas.
It is.
Yes!
Oh.
Dry
Slams
Tortugas National Park.
Dry
I
Tortugas.
felt like Florida would be too far east for something called
It
Dry
is,
Tortugas.
it
That's
is-
a badass name.
It is way the hell west of Key West
Dang, really?
Yeah,
you can
it's
only
like-
get to it by boat.
or plane.
Wow.
wait,
But it's like it's in the Gulf, and it's
Wow.
like way like
wait, if it's in the
it's
Gulf,
like
wouldn't it
north
be on the
of,
east?
north
Oh,
of
west
Cuba.
is that way? Yeah, west is that way.
It's west of Florida.
Yeah.
That's in the Gulf.
Sorry. I forgot how.
Wait, is it part of
directions work.
Florida?
I
Is
believe
it technically in
I
Florida?
believe
Okay.
so. Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's
You
off
should
the
see
southern
pictures
end.
of it. It's pretty
the
cool.
keys are at the bottom, aren't they?
It's
Oh
literally
yeah,
just
it says it's in Key West.
it's literally just a fort out in the middle of the ocean.
Wow. I
It's,
wonder what the strategic value.
I don't
of
know.
that was.
I'm not sure either.
If
no
the
idea.
Dolphins
Oh,
ever rise up,
I'll tell you
we're
exactly
putting them
what the
right back
strategic
in the
value
ocean.
is. Looking at it on the
Getting
map,
to
navally,
Louis-
it
to New
is.
Orleans, probably.
I mean, it's an island between Cuba and Florida.
Oh, okay.
I mean, it's a fucking blockade between those two as far as
Probably.
other
Before
ships
there were
getting into the
ships,
Gulf.
it was
no,
probably-
like to fucking fire cannons at ships coming into the Gulf.
That's probably true.
Yeah.
Absolutely,
Wow.
it is.
Dry Tortuga.
So there you
That
go.
sounds like a badass
I
wrestler
wanna go
name,
there.
doesn't it?
Yeah, it's really cool. It looks
Sounds like a
neat.
luchador. Ah, Dry Tortuga. How do you say dry in Spanish?
El Dry.
That's it. Dryo. So we keep our podcast lights on from all the support of the people that support us at patreon.com/therapy. Rewarded for their efforts, they get an entire extra hour of the show, or thereabouts. Usually our pre-show comes out every time you hear one of these episodes. They also get their episodes a day early. They also get access to a ton of extra content. We do deep dives, mostly of an academic nature, commentary on things that are going on in the world, and sometimes we do even fun stuff where we do extra bits like movie nights.
We
and
try not to do
Do
this
we?
try
very
not to-
often.
yeah, they exist.
Do we?
Go into the archives. There's also many partially completed book clubs. And so you should check out all of those things at patreon.com/therapy. It's a good time. We have a great community. They comment on all the episodes and we trade stories and support each other. And it's a great way to stay in touch with the program and take deeper steps with us. Patreon.com/therapy. But we want to welcome some new theropods. We've got James, Dawson, and Kiana.
And we have a new pterodactyl, not a scoop solo Cody.
Finally, somebody scooping in their name, but to let us know I'm not one of those things that you guys are always talking about.
I think
so
they're just
funny.
throwing you off the scent.
That's right. That's right. So, and we also want to thank our bosses, the Saccharine 16, but there's more than 16 if you count them. The mysterious and shrouded Illuminati members of our fan club, the Theraproducers. Thank you, Smitty Scoop, Jake Schneider, Robert Brownie, Junior Mint, Kayla Lansbury, Judy Schneider, Nathan's Hot Dog Scoop, King of Student Loan Debt, Dr. Ben Dawn, Crazy Banana Scoop, Mason Miller, Scott Jameson, Carolyn Albert, Leon Kassab, Kevin Chamberlain, Malia, which I figured out is how you say her name, at our support group. Richard Macy, Cindy Ash, Newstick, and first of name breather fire dumb of ass, Lord Colin Stewart.
That's 18.
Damn, look at us go.
Before we do the wrap up, quick, interesting little announcement. So over the course of our show, you have heard Nick and I talk for the last 3 years. This is episode 201 about cognitive behavioral therapy. Which is considered a gold standard exercise of psychotherapy. It has been so effective in so many people's lives. It has changed my life. If you're a long-term listener to the show, you know that I've suffered long-term with very bad anxiety. Cognitive behavioral therapy was the method that ultimately gave me the tools to climb out of that pit and to lead countless others over the course of my career through that gate. Cognitive behavioral therapy was originally pioneered by Dr. Aaron Beck, and Dr. Beck passed away today. He at the age of 100 years old.
Really?
He finally passed. And Dr.
Wow.
Beck has contributed more to this discipline, to our field, to mental health, than damn near any other human being. He is a revolutionary in his time. He was a Freudian psychoanalyst who went against what then was the dominant gold theory of psychoanalysis to come up with something much simpler, much more portable, but was heresy at the time. And evidence-based practice that has now been proven true so many times from every continent, and everybody attempting to do mental health science has validated that theory. And he is just a giant. He will be missed. He has contributed so much to our field, to my life personally. Dr. Aaron Beck, one of the greats of our discipline and of mental health care. He is a Hall of Famer and will always matter. And anybody out there who's benefited from therapy or cognitive behavioral therapy techniques in particular, tip of the cap and salute to Dr. Aaron Beck.
And if you'd like to hear this episode uncut and unedited,
And why wouldn't you?
enjoy our spontaneous side projects, go to patreon.com/therapy. And thank you for supporting mental health.
That is all the time that we got for this week's session. We want to thank our landlords, Matt Mattingly's Ice Cream Social Podcast. And thanks to those of you who contributed to our show today. We really appreciate it. Remember, pod therapy isn't something you should keep all to yourself. Share this episode with someone who needs it by opening the episode's description in your podcast app and copying and pasting the link provided into your social media. Don't forget, you can find us at facebook.com/podtherapy, on Twitter at PodTherapyGuys, on Instagram at PodTherapyGuys, and at patreon.com/therapy.
Do you want to submit a question to the show? Ask anonymously at podtherapy.net or email us at podtherapyguys@gmail.com. I'm Nick Tangeman.
I am Dry Tortuga.
Thanks, and we'll see you for your appointment next week.
My Spanish accent has some Dracula to it. Tortuga.
Your Dracula accent has some Spanish to
I think
it.
that might be Manuel Tortuga.
Manuel Tortuga is a great name.
That's my luchador name.
We gotta write that
El
down.
Boy Scout Manuel Tortuga.
That is a great name.